nation.
Chuck Schumer just had a complete meltdown on the Senate floor, screaming that requiring proof of citizenship to vote is Jim Crow 2.0. Meanwhile, 83% of Americans support the SAVE Act, including 76% of black voters. But here's what Schumer doesn't want you to know about why Democrats are so desperate to kill this bill. It's not just about voting integrity anymore. This is about the complete exposure of the Democrat Party's election strategy. When 83% of Americans support requiring proof of citizenship to vote, and Schumer's having a panic attack trying to stop it, you have to ask why. What are they so afraid of? Your vote is literally being diluted by people who should not be voting in the first place. Every illegal vote cancels out your legal vote. Now we're watching Democrats openly admit they'll fight tooth and nail to protect non-citizen voting. Senator Tuberville saying half a dozen members of Congress didn't legitimately even win their own elections. My friends, the evidence is mounting and the Democrat panic is reaching a fever pitch. And speaking of national security threats that the establishment wants to ignore, I need to tell you about a critical vulnerability that they've created. Back on January 5th of this year, the U.S. Department of Energy announced $2.7 billion in contracts to restore domestic uranium enrichment capabilities. And this is not just government spending, it's a declaration of intent. You see, America needs uranium. It needs domestic uranium, and it needs it right now. The U.S. consumes 55 million pounds of uranium annually, but we only produce 5% domestically. We're completely dependent on foreign nations, including our adversaries, for nuclear fuel. Just like Democrats made us energy dependent, they made us uranium dependent. But smart investors saw this crisis coming years ago. Atomic Minerals has been positioned in the uranium sector since, guess when? 2021. In their portfolio, companies are sitting on massive uranium deposits right now, right here in the United States. So while politicians are playing games with our election security, savvy Americans are securing their financial future in the uranium boom that is only just beginning. You see, the establishment failed us on energy independence, election security, and uranium production, but Americans are fighting back on all fronts. Look at the link in the description for your exclusive briefing for Next News viewers. We thank them for sponsoring the show, but here's the kicker. CNN was forced to admit not some fringe Republican position. The polling is so overwhelming, even mainstream media can't even spin it. 83% support includes massive Democrat voter support. You see, Schumer's not just fighting Republicans. He's fighting his own base. And now Trump-backed candidates are threatening to primary any Republican who won't support the SAVE Act. Vice President Vance just did an interview on the SAVE Act. Check this out.
Well, we're working very hard right now to get the Senate to approve it, because if the Senate approves it, we think the House would approve it too. Now, that would require, I think, some Republican senators who maybe they're a little too attached to the filibuster, maybe they're a little too attached to Senate procedure. This is about the integrity of American democracy. Like, do the people control who they elect, or do some shady people? It's like, who actually controls the people who cast the ballots or the people who count the ballots? We want the sovereignty to be with the people who cast the ballots, and that's why we have to get the SAVE Act passed. And you'll hear people say all the time, and I love this argument. They'll say, well, if you look at this precinct, only 3 illegal aliens voted in this election. Number one, that's 3 illegal aliens too many. And number two, if it's not a big problem, then why not just allow us to check ID and exercise some basic precautions to prevent illegal aliens from voting? I never quite understand the person who says, on the one hand, this never happens, and on the other hand, your effort to prevent it from happening is a threat to American democracy, which is fundamentally the Democrats' argument. By the way, it's like an 85-15 issue.
Yeah.
Most Democrats want voter ID because they want to protect their own vote.
But the elected leaders don't want to vote for it.
But the elected leaders don't, because they know that the more control they give to the people who are counting the ballots, as opposed to those who are casting the ballots, the more control they will have.
Vance lays it out. Voter ID is not racist and not controversial to Americans across demographic groups, except for Democrat Party loyalists blindly following their leaders like Chuck Schumer.
Also in Washington, conservatives are pushing for the passage of the SAVE Act, which would, among other things, require documentary proof of U.S. citizenship before registering an individual to vote in a federal election. Now, there is overwhelming support for ensuring that only citizens vote and for providing voter ID when they do. This morning on CNN, polling director Harry Enton called it this way. Here's cut 9.
Take a look here. Favorite photo ID to vote. 85% of white people favor it. 82% of Latino. 76% of black Americans favor it. So the bottom line is this. Voter ID is not controversial in this country.
Fully 83% of the American people support photo ID before you can vote. And to reiterate, black voters, 76%. White voters, 85%. Latino voters, 82%. Now, Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democratic leader, calls all of this Jim Crow 2.0. Now, when you hear them bring out that old chestnut of a talking point, you know they really have nothing. But how can it be when Jim Crow 2.0, when black voters themselves overwhelmingly support voter ID? Again, black voters support showing ID 76%. A white Democrat from New York City, it seems to me, is telling black voters they are too stupid to know what is best for them. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the modern Democratic Party in a nutshell.
In a nutshell. 76% of black voters support voter ID. Meanwhile, a Democrat from New York City is telling black voters are too stupid to know what's best for them. This sets up the central battle lines. Watch how Democrats are responding to the pressure with increasingly dramatic rhetoric. Schumer says it's Jim Crow 2.0.
We've got to get this done, and we've got to get it done very quickly. The SAVE Act is an abomination. It's Jim Crow 2.0 across the country. We are going to do everything we can to stop it.
Okay, so this is the Democrat leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, and he's lying through his teeth. The SAVE Act is not Jim Crow 2.0. The SAVE Act and Jim Crow are nothing alike. The Jim Crow laws were like state and local statutes that were enforcing racial segregation. On top of that, they would disenfranchise black Americans through things like poll taxes, literacy tests, grandfather clauses, and violence. That was truly rooted in white supremacy, and it targeted black Americans to suppress their voting rights and their civil rights. Now let's compare that to the SAVE Act. It's essentially a modern election security measure focused on providing proof of citizenship to be able to register to vote in the United States. So here are a couple highlights of what the SAVE Act does or requires. It requires voters to provide proof of citizenship, for example, a passport, birth certificate, or certain real ID compliant documents that indicate citizenship. And this needs to be done in person. So when registering to vote or updating voting records, it needs to be done in person, and you need your proof of citizenship. It prohibits states from accepting or processing voter registration applications without this proof. It effectively ends or severely limits mail-in registration, online registration, and automatic voter registration like at DMVs unless proof is provided in person. It also requires states to set up alternative processes for other evidence of citizenship if it's needed. And I've been seeing things go back and forth, but I also think it's being added in that it will require voter ID to vote. Like when you go vote, you have to have your ID. This is not discriminating against people based on race. But Chuck Schumer is trying to lie and manipulate people into reacting emotionally to oppose it because he doesn't think it's in Democrats' best interest. And I mean Democrats' political power. Look at this image. What does it say behind him? Rein in ICE, stop violence. Look at the first thing, in the roving patrols. Why do Democrats want to rein in ICE? Because they want less people being deported because it's going to hurt their census numbers when it gets to 2030. It also gives every time someone's deported, that's one less person they can convert from amnesty and have a future voter. So think about it. He wants us not deporting a bunch of illegal immigrants. And then on top of that, he wants our elections less secure. Put those two things together, and what does that make you think? That's interesting, is it not? As a whole, the Democrat Party wants to leave a bunch of illegal aliens in the U.S. and their states, and they want our elections less secure. That's concerning. Chuck Schumer is on stage lying through his teeth, trying to emotionally manipulate people into opposing us having better election integrity. Questionable, is it not? But that's all I got for now. Don't forget I have a free email newsletter. I send this out every morning at 7 a.m. Link is in my bio.
The boy's on point right there. And I've said the same thing. Of course they don't want to have everyone deported. They need the voters. And if you don't have an ID to vote, guess what? They can vote. It all makes sense. Schumer's inflammatory language is backfiring. Here's how Republicans are systematically dismantling the arguments. Dems going back to their hyperbolic, false-based descriptions on voter ID requirements. It's not true. Those who do not have a photo ID can't vote because every state offers photo ID from DMV or offer to help. Policy details matter, but this is becoming a messaging war, and Schumer just handed his opponents ammunition. Here's more from that clip. Schumer admitting the Democrat Party will now fight tooth and nail to block voter ID and citizenship.
We've got to get this done, and we've got to get it done very quickly. The SAVE Act is an abomination. It's Jim Crow 2.0 across the country. We are going to do everything we can to stop it.
We're going to do everything we can to stop it. That quote is political gold for SAVE Act supporters. Now watch how they're weaponizing Schumer's words against him. Mike Lee. It's scandalously false to suggest the SAVE Act requiring proof of citizenship to vote is to revert to Jim Crow. The SAVE Act is designed to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. Schumer could not be more wrong.
Not going to let them revert to Jim Crow. And if you don't think they want to revert to Jim Crow, just look what they did in the SAVE Act, which went back to took Jim Crow for the whole nation. By so making it hard, they said you need ID, and they made it so hard to show ID that probably half the people in America couldn't vote. We wouldn't let it pass.
Half the people in America couldn't vote? Really? So does that mean half the people in America can't drive? Half the people in America can't open a bank account? Half the people in America can't buy a pack of cigarettes? Is that right? This guy's a frickin' moron. It's just too easy to knock this. This is too easy to knock this guy down. The constitutional arguments are flying, but behind the scenes, there's trouble brewing, apparently, in the Republican ranks. And just like that, John Thune signals that the Senate will not pass the SAVE Act?
Any filibuster to try to outlast the Democratic minority under current rules. Do you have any expectation that you can succeed with that, given the enormous difficulty of doing that? In fact, the previous majority has not been able to.
Right. Well, I guess, and I would just remind people that the coin in the realm in the Senate is floor time. There's a finite amount of it, and we have a lot of things we have to do. There's a housing bill that's awaiting action, hopefully a market structure bill, possibly permitting reform, farm bill, highway bill. You can go right down the list. Russia sanctions, there are a whole bunch of things that could be teed up for action on the floor of the Senate. And so you have to make some judgments, and the conference will have a conversation about that. I've committed to that we will talk about that idea and determine whether or not what the conference's views are about it and how they want to proceed. As I said, we will vote on the SAVE Act, but exercising or triggering a talking filibuster has ramifications, implications that I think everybody needs to be aware of. So we will have those discussions, but that's obviously ties the floor up for an indefinite amount of time with not only unlimited debate, but also unlimited amendments.
All right, rather we had the Senate Majority Leader and the Speaker of the House speaking at the same time. That's why we're jumping back and forth. But the bill has passed, funding DHS and the other.
Oh, man. No balls, dude. No balls. Just end the filibuster, man. He's too worried. End it. Find a procedural move. End it. Get around it. Get the freaking vote passed. This crack in GOP unity could sink everything, and it's sparking a grassroots revolt. Would you support primarying any Republican that does not support the SAVE Act? That's a good question. The base is mobilizing against their own party leadership, but wait until you see the polling numbers that are changing everything. CNN forced to air record support for the SAVE Act. Push the SAVE Act and force Democrats to admit they are against the 83% of what Americans want. Here's CNN.
I do think that the SAVE Act is a great idea. 83% of Americans support it, as I learned on CNN this morning, and that includes, 76% of Black Americans, 82% of Latinos, 85% of white Americans. So to me, that's the move. Push the SAVE Act and force Democrats to admit that they are against what 83% of Americans want. I think this is all kind of just a distraction, a bit of nonsense.
Can I say?
Force their hand. The poll numbers are forcing hostile media to acknowledge reality, but some senators are going further than voter ID. Senator Tuberville talking about the voting machines. Remember? What did Vance say? Who counts the votes, right? You could have the votes, but who counts them?
Of course, President Trump wants same-day voting, mail ballots, get rid of these voting machines. There's a half a dozen people, whether it's the House or Senate, Larry, that are up here as we speak, that did not get elected. It was all bogus because we've seen the evidence, and if we don't straighten that out, you're going to see a lot more of it this fall, and it's just going to get worse and worse with the American people saying, listen, we got all y'all up there, and you don't do anything to straighten it out. We want closed borders, and we want fair elections. Those two things they are demanding, and as Republicans, we had better to listen to them and do that, or we're going to lose next fall.
A lot of states, don't even have an ID picture. And by the way, I vote in the state of Connecticut. You don't need an ID. You don't need a picture. You could show them a credit card, Senator. Anybody can get a credit card, any kind of credit card. You could show them a debit card, and that's sufficient. Many states allow driver's licenses. Well, anybody can get a driver's license. Some states are allowing illegals to get driver's licenses for commercial purposes. So the SAVE Act would eliminate that stuff. It's very important, but you got to make the case. I don't hear many people making the case. And let me
get rid of the voting machines. Require the ID to vote. Here's the moment of truth. When a white Democrat from New York tells Black Americans they're too stupid to get voter ID, while 76% of Black voters support it, you're watching the mask come completely off. Schumer's Jim Crow hysteria is not protecting anyone. It's about protecting illegal votes. You see, the SAVE Act is exposing everything. Democrats are in panic mode because they know their margins depend on questionable votes. When 83% of Americans support something, Chuck Schumer is having meltdowns to stop it, you know exactly what's happening. This is why they fight so hard against voter ID, because they need the illegal votes to win. The evidence is mounting, the polling is crushing, and their desperation is showing. Every American who believes in election integrity needs to demand their representatives support the SAVE Act immediately. Do you believe requiring proof of citizenship to vote is common sense? Or do you side with Chuck Schumer's hysteria? Let me know in the comments. While you're there, check out the Next News merch shop for gear that shows you stand with election integrity and America First policies.
The system controls information. Information control is power.
They don't want you to see this.
The truth only survives together. They don't want this. Share this now.